Thank you for tuning into the Health and Social Care Business Podcast. Here we highlight the people and businesses making a real difference in the sector. From everyday challenges to big industry shifts, we explore the issues providers face and how experts and organizations are stepping up with practical solutions. Our goal is simple: to bring you relatable insights, real stories, and actionable advice to help you navigate and thrive in the business of health and social care. Today's guest is someone I'm genuinely excited to have on the podcast. Like me, she started in the sector on the front line as a carer and has worked her way up. She has a deep passion for ensuring people receive quality care. She's now stepping into the role of entrepreneurship and using her experience to create solutions for some of the sector's biggest challenges. I first came across our guest on the Care Exchange podcast by Skills for Care. And her story about not realizing what a commode is, or well, she didn't know what a commode is, but it was, she not realizing it was detachable and carrying it up the stairs. I was like, that was me on my first day. So yeah, I had the exact same thoughts when I saw one as well. Then I learned she was an Essex girl like me and had been a registered manager in a home care group around the area I grew up. I felt an instant connection because I used to see the company car around. So when I heard her on the Skills for Care podcast, I was like, I know her, even though I never met her. So beyond that, our guest is an inspiration because she's not just talking about the issues in social care, she's actively solving them. And after 25 years in the sector, she saw firsthand how outdated compliance processes were preventing experienced carers from getting into jobs where they were needed the most. That frustration led to the creation of ME Passports, a digital solution designed to streamline compliance, reduce recruitment delays, and help tackle the workforce crisis. So if you're a carer or frontline worker looking to progress in your career, this episode will inspire you. And if you're a provider, be prepared to gain some practical insights into recruitment, compliance, and workforce retention. If you haven't guessed already, without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Carly Rochester, the director and co-founder of ME Passports. Hi, Carly.
How you doing? What an introduction. And I'm going to live up to that.
So the first day I listened to you, I was preparing for this day. So yes, it had to be heavy and I had to do it justice.
Oh, bless you.
So Carly, can you share a bit about your 25 years in social care and what inspired you to create the ME Passport?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I come into social care and I started as a coordinator, actually. And I didn't realise at the time, but, hundreds of years in my family tree, care had been very, my nan was a carer. I didn't realise at the time. Her mum was a carer. It went back in generations, basically, that our family all provided care and support to others, whether it was in a hospital setting, home care setting, and then obviously domiciliary care. And I sort of went into being a care coordinator. And initially I worked with Barking and Dagenham Council. So I worked with a company that sort of supported all of the council workers, because years ago they had hundreds of sort of council workers connected to them. And I sort of progressed from there, really. I think that, I had a really sharp introduction to sort of home care. And here's the phone and she turned hers off. So I always say that, in reality, you either sink or swim. And sort of that weekend was a sort of cold, hard shock of, cover. I had a guy that had a sawn-off shotgun in Barking that I had to get police assistance with, all the rest of it. But it's sort of, I was sort of fast-tracked, if you like, to know that I can do this. Yeah, so I stayed there for around, I think it was around 10 years. And sort of I was heading up, all of the carers in Barking and Dagenham, outside of hours, working with emergency duty teams, etc. And a few years, later, we sort of moved. And I moved to Havering, basically. So I looked at changing my care provider. And apart from another one that I'd worked for, I sort of stumbled across Lodge Group Care. It was local to me. Been offered a job, ironically, in Stratford, working for a big organisation that dealt with social care. And I thought, you know what, let me just give this a try to see how it goes. But I had no sort of desire at the time to sort of stay. And I was taken on as a senior care coordinator. And on my first day, I think I've just got these stories, but on my first day, the registered manager there collapsed to the floor. she had a family emergency and she was never ever to be seen again.
Wow.
So the director there, John Timms, who's the other co-founder of Me Passport, I said to him, you know, I didn't like some of the practices or the way things were done, and I was willing to stay, but I would have to take sort of the helm, if you like, to run it, which he agreed. And that sort of set off my journey as a registered care manager. And I've been a registered care manager for over 15 years now. And when I started with Lodge Group Care, they was the smallest provider in Havering, and now they're the largest commissioned provider within Havering. And we was the only provider to pick up an emergency holding service during COVID. And then what we did in that time, we actually facilitated the hospital discharge for 3,500 people when, you know, care agencies had shut or care homes weren't taking on, you know, people into the hospital because of the risk of COVID-19, all of that sort of stuff. I've always sort of worked in this fast-paced environment, but I'm well aware that I'm a small clog in a very large wheel, because it doesn't matter how much or how good I do my job in a care provider, I'm nothing without care workers. And they are essentially and absolutely who matter, because I can speak beautifully to clients and I can write lovely policies and I can do beautiful schedules. But if we don't have the care and support workers out there on the ground, like boots on the ground, deliver the care and support, we don't provide good services. And it's sort of that really that led me to create Me Passport in collaboration with John Timms, who's the other sort of is the other co-founder and director.
Okay.
And basically, in a nutshell, I had a call from a dad, and his 30-year-old daughter, who had been in remission from cancer, had a hospital checkup, and he phoned me crying that basically the hospital checkup exposed her cancer was back. It was a stage 4 and she had a couple of weeks to live. At the same time, I had carers with car trouble, carers with childcare issues. It was weather, so we had people with seasonal flu, all of that sort of stuff. And we was already struggling with the workload that we had. So we was like leaning on favours from care workers, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So when he said to me, you know, I have to increase this package, it needs to be specific carers, and to start immediately, you know, my problem is how the hell am I going to do it? Right, that's the reality, because you know sometimes you feel like a magician. And the other thing is, no matter what, you know, this young girl is having a dignified end journey basically, but the ugly truth of it is, who do you compromise? Do you compromise your care workers because you've got to cancel holidays, or you've got to lean on them? Do you cancel or do you compromise other clients, where you say, right, okay, you're going to have a later visit or whatever else it is? That's the ugly truth, because
it's been a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, exactly. So something's got to give. And we was in the office, it was a Friday night, and I'd said to my HR lady, you know, where's the new carers? Because when you're a care coordinator or a manager or anything like that, your speciality is you can, you know, coordinate new rotas and rounds and all of the rest of it, and redeploy your resources to expose capacity. You know, that's how we work in crisis. And she come and she gave me around 25 different HR files, and some of the people within in the pile that she gave me had 13 years unbroken experience in social care, 6 years, 10 years, some were 6 months, some were brand new, but all had no job, all was waiting to join our organisation. And looking at their sort of start date on their application form to where we was nearly at 4 months to onboard. And I'm just thinking, do you know what? Like, I just had 2 of these care workers with all of this experience that they're bringing to the table. They're local, they drive, they've got great availability, they've got training, you know, I can do all of these things, but I just couldn't clear them because of compliance, basically. You know, it's right and proper that we have rigorous compliance processes because we look after vulnerable people, but they're coming from one regulated service provider to another, and they're doing the same checks over and over again. So to me, it was like, you know, once I got home at gone 11 that night, I sort of said to my husband, listen, I'm going to have a bath, just leave me, you know, come and knock on the door if I've drowned myself in about 25 minutes. You know, you have one of those sort of days.
Yeah, of course.
And because I think sometimes, the reality is, we're human beings. When you're listening to a father that's crying that his daughter of 30 is going to lose her life,
absolutely,
and he'd not long buried his wife, and being a mum myself as well, I was like, oh my God, how, we have to do everything we can to make sure that people get really good services. And I sort of thought to myself, after I'd spoken to carers and they'd helped me out and I'd made some adjustments to the schedules and all of that sort of stuff, I was like, do you know what? If I can travel the world on a passport that looks virtually nothing like me anymore because it's nearly 10 years old, why on earth can I utilize my own data to empower me to have access to employment opportunities, so I can go to a care provider and I can say, listen, I'm working for a provider down the road. I'm on a 0-hour contract. I'm available for 40 hours. They only have 15 hours work for me. I really enjoy working for them, but it's not financially sustainable. So rather than me leave the sector, have you got any vacancies for 25 hours? And here's my availability. And it was from that sort of thought process, and that idea that I just thought, you know what? I'm going to get on a mission now and I'm going to develop an employment passport. I had no idea how, no idea where to start.
Wow.
But, I think that sometimes if something's meaningful and you can see how much value it brings to not only, your workforce, because you enable them to, be financially sustainable and be empowered and stay within a workforce that they really bring value to and they love. But exactly. And also, the actual, the service users that we look after, people that are using the services by providing them, a people rich workforce. So I was just like, listen, God knows how this is going to be done, but it's going to be done. And thankfully as well, I've done it in partnership with John Timms, who's the co-founder. And we've got a great team, but we've literally been on a mission and it's out and it's working and, all the rest of it.
Wow. That response, because I wanted to ask questions later about certain things, and very clear. Even though, yes, you say you have 25 years of experience, you've actually allowed the sector go through you. Your experience is multifaceted and it's deep. So if anybody was to create something like this, it would have to be someone like yourself, because you really do understand the problem.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of providers directly. As you may or may not know, we actually support them with getting contracts.
Right.
And when we write tenders and when we ask them about recruitment, because we have to have interviews with them to understand their processes and to see, I haven't actually come across any that says we use ME passports. And I know the value of it. And that's why I was like, okay, I need to get this to a wider audience because, like you said, compliance processes are absolutely wonderful, but sometimes it takes too long. I personally believe it could be shorter. I love the 12 weeks process. However, onboarding, like you said, if someone already has the experience, they've shadowed, like you mentioned, someone had 13 years of unbroken experience. Does this person really need 12 weeks? And, so I love that you're addressing these issues. And that's why I have you on here today. So for our care provider audience, what is ME passports and how does it serve as a solution to the challenges faced in compliance and staffing today? I know you've touched upon this, but there might be someone out there who actually, a new provider, for example, who is going into it and who wants to understand, how can this actually help me?
So under Regulation 19, there's a whole sort of process you need to go through as a provider, verify people's identity, get all of their profile information, get their employment history unbroken from when they first started work, get their references, get a DBS check if it's on the update service, gain their right to work, if they've done any e-learning, validate that, all of that sort of stuff. So there's a standard process we've all done. There's some things that are digital, that you go to certain providers and say, yeah, okay, we use UCheck, for an example. We do the DBS for UCheck. But actually, when the candidate comes in, they start from scratch and they fill in our application form. And what we do is we've got two ladies within our HR. They'll take the passport, they'll look at it to make sure the font's okay. They'll look at it to see if the actual picture on the passport, is the same as the person in front of them, all of this sort of stuff. and they'll apply for a DBS check. There's a very low proportion of people that know anything about the update service, which means basically,
Absolutely.
If you have a DBS update, then, or a DBS on the update service, I should say, then you don't have to go through the whole process of doing a DBS again, because as long as it's the right workforce and it's up to date and you can, prove that and bring your original certificate to a care provider, then, that saves a fair amount of time. What we did was we said, right, okay, how do we digitize everything basically? How do we make this whole process just very fluid? So what we did was we partnered with a company called Digidentity, and Digidentity provide our identity verification service. They also provide the identity verification service for every practicing UK doctor, and also every person within the NHS that has the NHS staff passport. And ironically, we have calls with the NHS staff passport where they sort of contact us to say how you're doing, and we sort of learn and lean off of each other. But anyway, so when they come into our app, they have their identity verified, they have their passport scanned or their driving license scanned, they have facial recognition to their documents, they have a liveness and selfie check, they have an Interpol check to make sure, everything's all good, and they have a lost and stolen check to make sure that the document's not lost or stolen. That's the gateway into Me Passport.
Okay.
Once they're in our platform, they go on a whole journey. So it's a self-filling journey. So the actual person that is creating the passport starts it and ends it. So there's no intervention from anybody else. They do all of their profile information. They'll enter all of their employment history. Their employment history is verified. If they have UK-based employment history, we can actually verify that as source from the HMRC records. Then what we'll do is we'll automate their references. We have anti-fraud technologies. So when the references are sent out, we have anti-fraud. The references are verified and validated. They're held within the passport. They do an in-person documentation check with the post office. We actually partnered with the post offices nationally. So no matter in the country where anyone joins Me Passport, they can actually go to their local post office and have their in-person documents verified. They will then go on to do their DBS check, and their DBS check will be undertaken to the level of the position that they want to be. So if it is a child and adult support worker, they'll have a child and adult support worker DBS check. Whether they're a care worker, whether they come on as a cook within a care home, a receptionist, an admin, whatever else it is within the sector, they have a check that's relevant to their actual job role. And then what happens is once the DBS check is back, they will undertake joining the DBS update service. It's mandatory with our platform that passport holders actually join the DBS update service, because that makes sure that their DBS that they've carried out within our platform is portable across providers. So once all of those checks are back, they stay within the app that the actual passport holder owns. So they build it, own it, and share it wherever they wish. It's their data, their choice. They do what they like with it. We just empower them. I like to say that, what we do is we digitally aggregate all of the checks you need to get access to employment opportunities. That's it. We don't make any recruitment decisions. There's nothing like that. We've just built a platform that enables people to have access to employment opportunities. And also we actually partnered with a company called Flourish. They used to be Grey Matter Learning, but they are an endorsed e-learning provider by Skills for Care. What happens is the individual will take 13 e-learning courses in app and behind their identity, all secure. And that training then is held within their passport. So rather than every single place they go having to redo the e-learning, they actually hold behind their verified identity also their training. So they have identity, DBS, right to work, references, profile, employment history, DBS update service, and their training all in, and it remains live on their passport, so they don't have to do it again.
Wow, Carly, I'm just listening to you thinking, why have providers not adopted this? Because this is such an amazing solution. This will save them time, cost. It's going to improve their workforce. Staff will be happy. It's going to make adopting new stuff quicker. It's even going to make upskilling better. It's amazing. Thank you for that. What I like about the product is it's really compliance heavy. So we work in a highly regulated sector. And I love that you've taken into consideration, you made reference to Regulation 19, and you've really taken into consideration every aspect of compliance. You also said that everything is autonomous. So it's a tech-enabled product, really.
Yeah.
So you're using tech to enable people make better decisions and to solve problems.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I also love how robust it is. So again, if a provider out there who is trying to make a decision whether or not to use the product or if it's going to be useful, it's really robust and there's no fear of not meeting any CQC compliance. We'll be talking later about CQC and how this helps, but from just your direct feedback right now, or your response rather, it's just so robust, and I'm excited for every provider who's going to be listening to this, because I have no doubts that once they listen to it straight away, they will be trying to adopt it. You previously shared the heart-wrenching story of a critical call that highlighted the systematic gaps. How did that experience lead you to envision this amazing tool that could not only streamline compliance, but also help manage staffing shortages? I'm asking this for perhaps maybe another Carly out there who is in the position that you were. Yeah, so just to encourage them if they're thinking of maybe going to be an entrepreneur, or just to know the headspace that you were when you decided to create an amazing tool like this.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had that really sad conversation. And I think that, people within the sector have the answers, because we work in it day in, day out. Like, I never ever set out to be any tech entrepreneur. If you would have said to me, a few years ago, you're going to create an app and you're going to be this, have a tech company, I would have sort of laughed at you, because it was never anything, I was not... just about the computer at school, I was a girl in the 80s, you know what I mean? So I've just sort of got by in life, but sort of the reality is, I feel like for years in social care, you go to a lot of meetings, especially register managers or care coordinators or whoever, and we talk about problems. There's problems with this, we haven't got enough of this, there's problems with that, it's all of that sort of stuff. And you know what? I think that, we can talk about problems all day long, but the reality is we have to just cut the sound break. We've got to be creating solutions. I had no idea at all how we was going to go about developing this app, but my sort of first point of call the next day, after I'd sort of written me passport down on basically a post-it note, if you like, to say, right, this is what this is going to do. And I'll tell you as well, there's lots more to it as we go sort of further on in this conversation. But I contacted the local authority and said to him, look, who deals with innovation? And there was a good guy there at the time, Ben, and he sort of headed up commissioning. And he said to me, well, I don't know, because people just come to us with problems. And I said, listen, what are you doing this afternoon? Because you're about to get a visit from me, because I'm coming over. And I feel like, something sometimes has to just spark, a flame in me, basically. And thankfully, it's never gone out, because I wholeheartedly believe in the product, because I've done it, day in, day out for years. And I know that it will bring, and it does bring, so much value. But I think sort of my advice to anybody out there thinking, I know there's a real bad problem and I've got an idea for a solution, is just to start. You'll find a way, just start somewhere. That first conversation for me, going over to the local authority to say, listen, this is the situation. I'm telling you right now, you're talking to nearly 3 decades worth of experience within social care. Yeah. Whether I was 20 or in my late 40s, sadly, which I am now, it's the same.
Oh, great.
Oh, thanks. Botox. No, I'll have to get it. But anyway, it's the same. So we can't keep talking about problems. How do we get a solution? And I was really lucky with the local authority, Havering, that they really, I don't know what to say, but they was very open to innovation, basically. And they said, listen, I told them all about it. And they said, look, I'm going to put you into a competition. We went into a competition for the local government association.
Oh, wow.
And I think there was like 200 different care providers, with all different sort of ideas. And we got into the last 7. So So that was really good. It was quite a long process, but we validated that it's not just a problem for me in my organisation, it's a problem for everybody. And basically, so we went off to the local government association, and Me Passport was initially supported by NHS Digital. And NHS Digital had a conversation with us and said, listen, we want this to be a national product because it's a great solution. But the problem was with the funding. Anything good in NHS is, you know, they have a little pot of funding, but they never know where the next pot comes from, which led John and I to go off and bootstrap it.
So I've structured this conversation to give actionable insights to providers, but the more I hear you speak, because I'm also building a tech-enabled product,
right?
I feel like I have to get you back on here. I know we're not even halfway through, and I'm like, I have to get you back on here because that is a separate conversation for people like myself. Like you said, people in the sector have the answers. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh my goodness, light bulb moments.
Yeah.
So there are people in the sector like myself who have different backgrounds, who have either come from a business development background, finance background, or whatever the case may be, and they've come into the sector, especially a very fragmented sector like social care, and we still use a lot of paper-based products and things like that. Digitization hasn't really hit the sector, so there is still a lot of innovation that could be had. So letting you know very kindly that please, I may have to get you back on here, Carly, so
no problem.
Talk about the other aspects, because I love what you also said about you didn't set out to be a tech guru. You saw a problem, you knew what the solution could be, and on that journey you found the answers as you went along, and then serendipity also played a part as well. So yeah, I love that. Okay, so you've given us quite a bit of information about the ME passports, and you've actually shared how exactly the uptake is and what carers need to do, or whoever is going to use the product, etc. So is the ME passport primarily a compliance tool, or does it offer capabilities that assist with staffing, recruitment, and training? I know you touched upon this before, but I'm now actually asking you directly, is it a compliance tool?
Yeah, so it's their employment passport. So the first part and parcel of the whole journey is that they set up their profile and they do all of their compliance checks.
Okay, by design it is.
By design, it's part of the process is the compliance. Right. Once they are compliant, there's a couple of ways as well that people join Me Passport.
Okay.
One is if they're just organically, they just want to work in social care. So they've heard about the platform and they would just download the app, go onto the whole journey to enable themselves to have an employment passport that they can share with employers and be connected to all of the providers that are connected to Me Passport. They have jobs on our job board, people that have a Me Passport, and they can only apply if they have a fully verified Me Passport, will literally come on, do all of their checks, go onto the job board, see all of the jobs that are local to them, wherever it is, and then they can apply for as many jobs as they want. So that's sort of one way. Another thing that we actually do as well is if, like the example I was giving to you earlier, if you're a carer and you work for a really good organisation, but the organisation just has 20 hours and there is no way that you can stay with this provider earning 20 hours a week because, you know, rent's dear, the cost of living dear, everything like that. You can actually put yourself open to work. So you sort of turn a little light onto yourself. Yeah. And say, so you'd say, I'm open to work to other providers. And then what happens within our platform, the providers that are members of our platform can actually go onto the open to work section, and anybody in their area that has a Me Passport, they can see and they can contact with jobs. So they can say, right, okay, we're looking for weekend staff. I can see that you want weekend staff. You've got all of your e-learning, your DBS, your right to work, everything like that. And they literally will just do the connect. They will contact the passport holder directly within app. They'll tell them what they're contacting them for, what job opportunity, where it is, a bit about their organisation, their pay rate, that sort of stuff. That notification goes to the passport holder. The passport holder will review that information and they will either decline because they're not interested, or they will accept. If they accept, the conversation starts between them and that employer directly. There's no middleman, basically. So yes, there's all different capabilities. So although it is an employment passport, there's also a job board functionality. And they can also, if they want extra hours and things like that, they can actually put themselves as open to work for other care providers.
Oh, brilliant. So it is a compliance tool. Actually, it's more than a compliance tool with multiple entries. So a carer could actually just download the app and just sign up on it.
Yeah.
Not only does it make them compliant and job ready for any organization, but it can also access other or multiple job opportunities. I absolutely love that. And then organizations can also use this as part of their process, encouraging their staff members to use it so that they can remain compliant.
Yeah, I mean, for sort of care providers as well, they'll have 1, 2, 3 people doing all of their compliance checks.
Yeah.
If they're a member of Me Passport, it's all technology enabled. So basically, I walk into a care provider and I say, listen, I'm looking for a job as a care worker. Great. Instead of me sitting down doing their application form and them doing my references and then helping me to submit a DBS check and then making sure that I've got no employment gaps and then making sure I've got the training, all of that sort of stuff, they would simply go onto their Me Passport dashboard, invite me, and the technology would do the rest. So they actually save on the resources inside their organizations because the technology would make sure that the identity matches the person through really robust check-in. The DBS would be sent off. The in-person document verification would be done at the post office as and where required. The references would be sent off. They would be sent back and received. All of that sort of stuff that care providers would normally spend, however many, hours a month doing. They simply send an invite code to somebody that walks into their organization. Once that person accepts the invite and starts their journey, they can track them. But the technology would do every single thing else. The only thing that a care provider gets is a notification to say, Carly Rochester's ready. End of. That's it.
Okay.
So they save themselves a ton of cash, basically.
Yeah.
Because the other side of this as well is you do get a lot of drop-offs. If you as a care provider, the foot flow that comes into the organisation, on board 50 people and actually 2 start. So for care providers right now who have to be, like always, efficient, especially with the increases that are coming with the NI, etc. They can actually streamline and redeploy their internal resources to have technology that does it for them, basically. It saves them a ton of cash.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the ME Passport has multiple entries, and one of them is through, like you just explained, through the actual service provider. So let's talk about the ease of integration and practical use. You've just mentioned it, but I really want us to go into it a little bit more because some providers or some organizational structure is the registered manager wears multiple hats.
Yeah.
So for a provider like that, and providers like that are kind of dear to my heart because they're SMEs and I kind of feel their pain. So time is of the essence. What is the ease of integration for an organization like that? So they don't have a team or a compliance team, for example. This is a one-man band, or maybe like a PA or a small provider. What is the ease of integration to their process?
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's just, you sign up with Me Passport. We will verify that you're a care provider. They go through an identity check-in, process themselves to make sure that we're doing our due diligence with care providers, and basically they sign up, and then what they get is they get their own Me Passport dashboard. They have their own sort of identification number, if you like, so they can straight away start inviting people to the platform. Any of their footfall at all that comes in unlimited, they can invite, and then they can start looking at who's open to work locally, and they can start posting unlimited jobs on the job board. So it's a really sort of streamlined, slick process, if you like. I'm all about, I want a really positive sort of user experience.
Yeah.
Our technology as well gives them updates on every single person that they've invited. So what stages they're at, how many contacts we've had with them in terms of the Me Passport sort of automations, where they are, how many references are back, all of that sort of stuff. So it's a very intuitive and informative sort of process. And if they do have a CRM, then we have an API.
Brilliant.
We can connect to their CRMs. And also we're in talks at the moment with several software providers that have sort of digital care planning and digital rostering systems, massive organizations, I'll say, that basically we're looking at how we will integrate with them. So, you know, if somebody comes in, for an example, to an organization, they have a Me Passport, the care provider accepts the Me Passport, like, you know, they're on the Me Passport platform,
Okay.
and then that all of that information can integrate directly into a roster, so there's no sort of duplication of record entry.
Oh, wow.
So all of a sudden you've got, you know, all your recruitment done, it's gone over to your rostering system, all of the details have been transferred across, and you're ready to schedule someone. So there's lots of exciting stuff in the background happening at the moment.
Wow, I'm excited for them. So, for example, you use Care Planner, you've onboarded all your staff, you're using the ME passports. In the future, that's all you have to do. And then when it comes to rostering or using the rostering aspects of the software, it's all integrated. That sounds absolutely amazing. So with regards to ease of use, I'm excited for the future. And even how it works right now, like I said, it's quite self-explanatory. So for small to medium businesses, like I said, it's intuitive. So once you log on and once you start the process, ease of use and everything, it's self-explanatory. So we've spoken about how easy it is to use it in the current workflows. We've also spoken about a typical onboarding process as well. So the next aspect, which I'm guessing if you're a new provider who is just learning about the ME Passport for the first time, you're going to think, oh my goodness, this tool is amazing, but how much is it going to cost me? So what is the cost structure for the ME passports? And you've already mentioned it's a cost saving tool, but what is it? Do you have to pay for it? Is it free?
Yeah, I mean, so we have all different packages basically, you know.
Brilliant.
We was a care provider, so, you know, we was never out to sort of shaft the sector, you know. Like I said, you know, this was all created on the back of there's a problem, let's solve the problem. So we have pay-as-you-go packages where you've got no commitment at all. We have, you know, startup packages, all the way up to, you know, big enterprise packages. You know, and that will obviously depend on how much sort of data they're going to retain and all of that sort of stuff. And also different sort of functionalities within the platform. But we've done it in a way that, listen, if you're starting and you can't commit, that's fine. Go on a startup or a pay-as-you-go package, join, and then, you know, you can post jobs, it's free. You can invite your workforce to it, that's free. You know, that invitation code. So if you are a one-man band and you're doing all of your recruitment yourself, you don't have to do that. You literally would just send an invite and track somebody. The passport itself, the checks are core costs, and it's actually the user. So the actual passport holder, you know, they pay for their DBS basically.
Of course.
You know, that sort of stuff, because it's theirs, it's empowering them. And there's no ongoing cost or anything like that. But you know, initially I wanted the Department of Health and Social Care to pay for everybody's DBSs and things like that, because, you know, ultimately there was, you know, if there's a problem and we got the solution, then why not? But even though we've got great support from the Department of Health and Social Care before, they've come down to see us and, you know, they love it and all of that sort of stuff. It's full of red tape. So you're just best off to say, right, okay, this is just a product. These are the costs of the product, and this is how we go, and how it evolves from there. We never know, you know, but
absolutely.
So and your next question, I think, is how does invest in it? So I mean, you know, it depends, doesn't it? You know, if you think about, if you've got somebody in HR that is on, I don't know, 18 to 25 grand a year, depending on, you know, the size of your provider, you're going to save 96% of your costs, basically, because instead of that one individual sitting there and doing all of the paperwork, they won't need to do that anymore. What you can do with your staff that actually, you know, carried out all of those checks is redeploy them, or strengthen your values-based recruitment. You know, make sure that when somebody comes into your organization, they're the right fit.
Yeah.
to stop, to help with your staff retention, basically. So there's massive cost savings. I'll just say as well, the last 2 years Skills for Care, for an example, and this is, I could go back 10 years, but let's go 2 years. Their state of social care, the workforce, across 2 years, nearly 800,000 people left their roles within social care. Around 500,000 of those were re-recruited within the sector.
Wow.
And those re-recruitment costs, on average, come to £1.6 billion. So because there's no transferable data, we are constantly in this hamster wheel of paying out for the same checks over and over again. I could go tomorrow and join 10 different organisations, and I would have to do 10 sets of everything. And all of those 10 organisations would have to pay for me 10 times, whereas with this, I can go and apply for 10 organisations, and I may not be a right fit for 8. And 2 of them, I might think, okay, well, actually, I could join. I've got a choice then, where I want to go. I've got 2 places where I think they actually fit me. I fit them. Now I've got a choice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. So this tool is cost saving for both the providers and the carers, because some providers actually charge the carers for training. I don't know if this is done recently, but but at some point they did. So
they do, I hear it all the time.
Yeah, well, there you go. So for carers as well, with this tool, it's cost saving for them. And for providers, new providers or existing providers, there is absolutely cost saving. This is cost saving rather, because if you're a new provider, you may not have multiple teams, you may not have a HR team that you're paying full time. However, when you do grow, you will need that. But with this tool, you wouldn't need a HR person who you're having to pay XYZ. So that's saving you cost in the future.
Absolutely,
and for an existing company, you could streamline your workforce by using this tool and reducing your costs and investing it in other areas, be it maybe investing it back in your staff, offering incentives, incentivizing your current staff. So the funds could be used in different ways. I'm clearly an evangelist for Emmy Passport, so I'm going to stop now. So that's that on the cost considerations. Previously we spoke about CQC. As we're in a regulated sector, so everything, especially small providers, large providers, if they just want to ensure that they're doing everything to please CQC. So CQC compliance is top priority for care providers. And we have spoken about how it will support their compliance processes. Could you just remind listeners or just give us one clear sentence as to how this would enhance CQC compliance?
Yeah, I mean, so it's been built to meet CQC Regulation 19, and like you rightly said earlier, I'm well versed to it because I've read it day in, day out for several years. And basically, what we've done with this, not only have we built the process to meet Regulation 19. Once somebody comes onto your organisation and you employ them, you generate a digital report to meet CQC Regulation 19. And the report will show a CQC inspector exactly how identity has been achieved, exactly the time of the selfie, the document that was read, the chip that was, checked with Interpol, like it's over and above, where the references are from, all of the employment history, every single thing. Like for years, one of my jobs has been for every quarter to sit on the floor, nothing attractive here, sit on the floor with another HR lady and go through 200 files, care workers to audit their
preparation for CQC.
Exactly. Waiting for the CQC inspection. And the reality is, nobody has that time, and it's completely archaic to do it like that, so Because it was a pain point for me, you know, one of our actual desires with this was, right, okay, now we've got this amazing tool. How do we now prove to CQC compliance? Well, now what we do is everybody has their own individual CQC report that literally a provider would just press a button and it generates, it shows them all of the data, it proves CQC compliance.
Oh, so you mean on the app itself?
On their dashboard, on an employer's dashboard, they
Okay.
literally press generate, and it will generate them a CQC report to show how they've met Regulation 19 in every single area.
That's
So it's all
impressive.
automatic, you know. They can do it for an individual or they can do it for their whole workforce. Now, CQC do not endorse any product
Of
because,
course.
you know, I've tried, yeah. But we have we've got an area manager within Northeast London, and we've actually got the national she's the ex-national safeguarding lead for CQC on our advisory board.
Oh, brilliant.
And I've showcased this. She's been part of the conversation. Obviously, she's amazing, Teresa. And we've showcased Me Passport to CQC, and they was absolutely blown away. You know, I don't want to sort of, you know, blow our own trumpet here, but you know, I feel like, you know, the sleepless nights, maybe, you know, we could cut myself a break. But I mean, what they said is that one of the biggest areas that people foul is safer recruitment, literally because
Yes.
when
Yeah.
you read regulations, it is subjective. It is how you
Yeah.
take that regulation to be.
Yeah.
So when they go into providers, new providers are completely overwhelmed. You know, there's lots
Yes,
of
they
other
are.
things outside safer recruitment that they need to know: your risk assessments, your care plans, your consent, the mental capacity,
Yeah.
you know, take it and making sure that people have the mental capacity and consent, and your scheduling and your you know, your times to and from calls, and making sure that you've got right paid travel time, and you know, every single
Just so
thing
much. Yeah.
encapsulated. Exactly. So providers fall down. So it's like, you know, what CQC actually said to us is, in the future, if we are on the trajectory that we are now, they could see that if they go into an organization and they have Me Passport, they wouldn't even look to see whether they meet safer recruitment, because it's almost like a seal, a gold standard,
Wow.
a gold standard. Because, you know, we in social care, we are very risk adverse. So when we
Yeah.
built this, it was all like top draw, you know, who's the best at this, who's the best at giving us this result, whatever else it is. So yeah, thankfully they gave us that feedback, was really good.
I love that. And again, to reiterate why I really wanted to have you on here, because we deal with a lot of small and medium providers who also, when it comes to internal audits, reviews, and getting ready for CQC, they're either very nervous because they haven't done it before, and they just, you know, it's a nerve-wracking thing dealing
Yeah.
with inspectors. But hearing firsthand your feedback, especially in the conversations we've had with CQC, it's great, because it's going to give them the confidence to even go into the inspections, and not just to go into the inspections, but to aim for a good rating or even an outstanding rating. So yeah, brilliant stuff. So we spoke about the Me Passports helping to bridge staffing gaps and enabling faster verification and onboarding care workers. Brilliant. And you've also spoken about how care providers might incorporate the ME passports into their recruitments. But is there an actual example? Actually, I feel like you've answered that question already with all the information you've given us in regards to how we could or providers could integrate this into either their recruitment and retention. You don't even need a recruitment and retention plan documents, because normally previous way you would have your operational manual, right? And then in your operational manual you've got your recruitment strategy documents, and yeah, that what you've created has kind of like fast forwarded or streamlined processes so much that there's so many things within recruitment and retention, and also training and hiring, that providers can do to provide a more efficient service. In terms of training and development, how come Emmy Passport supports ongoing staff development? I know we spoke about training. Or is that something you spoke about, partnership
Yeah.
with Flourish, or is it something they're currently doing?
Yeah, I mean, so the Department of Health and Social Care are always talking about a skills passport that, has gone on for a conversation for many years.
Yeah,
But with us, we recognise that apart from the compliance aspect, training is an issue. But you have to start somewhere. So
yeah,
we don't do any in-person training, anything like that. We just empower people to undertake endorsed accredited e-learning courses and
right,
retain them. That's it. Once somebody has taken the courses, like the 13 mandatory courses within their passport,
right,
we do give them access to a bank of 500 e-learning courses. So, for an example, if they go into somebody who has autism and they've actually
right,
not had training in autism and they're not confident or whatever else it is, they can actually go into their passport and they can take an autism e-learning course just to give themselves a baseline of understanding. Obviously, would need to be built on, but people are like sponges. They love learning. They love
yeah,
development,
yeah,
we was just like, you know what, we'll start somewhere, which is to give them the ability to have these 13 courses, but we'll also empower them to say, listen, you don't need to take these, but if you want to, and you want to enhance your profile, then you've got a bank of 500 different courses that you can undertake. So I think that there's a lot of different ways we will go with this in the future. One being well-being, we're going to build in some well-being support and things like that into the platform. And perhaps a further conversation will be had around sort of the training aspect of it. But as we sit now, we've landed sort of where we're currently positioned.
okay. Well, another question I was going to ask was about integrating it into the HR strategies, but you've also covered that as well. But one thing I feel I would like us to just to touch upon very quickly
Yeah.
is about not overwhelming individuals. So the reason I'm asking you this is because in a typical provider structure, you have a separate tool for care planning, a separate tool for rostering, a separate tool, like different digital tools.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you have an API.
Yeah.
But a lot of providers may not even know. This is not even for providers. This is for the systems that they actually use.
Yeah.
So in order for them not to be overwhelmed, just encourage them or say something just to let them know that this is something that it's not just going to be an additional burden for them.
I guess this is different because, an app that they may have will be digital care planning. So that's relevant to the actual provider that they're working for and the clients that they care for. Another app would be their scheduling system. They'll have another app that will be their login and log out system. If they're lucky enough, they'll be with a company that has one system that does all three of those things.
Absolutely.
But I think that, this is different because this is them. This is why it's called me. It's me.
Right.
It's all of my data. And that's just there as a safeguard to show I am somebody that works in health and social care. I have an identity that's recognised throughout various care providers. If my provider loses work, I'm not vulnerable. I have the power to go and get a job elsewhere if I have to. I think that this is different in the sense of, they're sort of transactional apps for their role within a specific provider. This is not that. This is an empowerment to give them safety. To say, listen, we value you, we respect you, you're in the sector, we need you, stay in. And you can stay in because now you have a recognised, trusted identity.
Brilliant. I couldn't have said that any better. Now, speaking about carers, there's a carer somewhere listening to this and they're frontline workers, having navigated your own journey, moving from frontline to leadership, what are the key steps or challenges you faced during this transitional period? And based on your experience, what advice do you have for current care workers who aspire to move into leadership roles like yourselves?
I just think it's passion and drive, to be honest. Passion for the sector. You have to love what you do and you have to value it. For me, it's always been, I recognize how important it is, for the people that we serve in the community, and actually, looking beyond a schedule, a name on a schedule, to say, this person needs care and support. Who are we talking about? Who is this individual? What was the life they had? What sort of family structure they had? All of that sort of stuff, and having value for what we do, because it's so important. And I think that, for me, it's just always been about that. And also, I have massive respect for care workers. I fully appreciate that I am absolutely nothing without the workforce. They are absolutely incredible. Domiciliary care in particular is extremely hard, and I'm not taking it away from any care home worker, but domiciliary care is in the community, half an hour calls all throughout the borough. They're on foot, they're in the rain, it's cold. You could travel for half an hour and turn up to someone's door and they don't want you, or they've cancelled, or whatever else it is. So it's just recognizing, one of the passions I had about this was, I meet lots of people that come in and they've got no recourse to public funds and they are desperate. And they've got young families and they're desperate to work. And it's just like, we're always saying about, we have a capacity issue. It's everybody's conversation within social care. There's a recruitment crisis. Okay, yes, there's a recruitment crisis, but we physically can't see the capacity that's out there. I come across all the time people that are desperate for hours. So I think that sometimes, things are just sound bites. But I think that, going back to your question, it's just loving what you do, basically, and having the ambition to do better. It's a very fragmented sector. It's very archaic, and just having a vision for, the future that, one day that could be your mum, your nan, your aunt, you receive care, and how do you want it to look? And if it doesn't look like how you think it should look, do something about changing it.
Absolutely. Like you said, people in the sector have the answers. So just to add to what you said, I do believe it's about passion and value. And I started this conversation by saying we both started in the sector, carers, but I need to correct myself. You started as a care coordinator. Okay, I have been a carer. I would always say, to date, it's one of the best jobs I've ever had. It is tough because you're out there on the rain, like you said, on foot. You don't want to let people down. You don't want to let families down. You're in these people's lives. People used to hate doing doubles with me because I'm that carer who would be there later chatting, making sure you're actually okay, and then you're like, we've got to go to the next call, and I'm like, let's just give another. I was that carer. And of course, when you're really that invested in people's lives and you see the true value, you will come up with solutions, because you would see this hoist needs to be, rather than it being checked every XYZ amount of time, it needs to be checked because something has happened. So you will, because you are so invested and you see the value and you have the passion for it. I personally also feel, just to echo what you've said, that the leadership would come, the growth would come, because automatically you're going to be thinking about solutions because of the people that you're looking after. So yes, it's not just about, the tick box exercises and accumulating the courses and whatever it needs to grow. Passion and value would also play a massive role in that journey. And I would just want to make sure that we've covered everything before we let you go. We've also covered avoiding digital overloads, because the ME passport has seamless integration. They also spoke about API tools that's going to even enable it for the seamlessness even further once other software companies has adopted or included the API within their current software structure. So we've also spoken about the future, but this is coming to the end. In terms of the future, what are the key recommendations for providers who are ready to implement the ME passport to address both compliance and broader workforce issue? In short.
Yeah, I mean, just contact us and sign up basically, and we'll talk you through it. That's it. You know
That's
what
it.
I mean? It's a ready-made system. So, your recruitment, your onboarding is taken care of by digital transformation, basically. We're here to digitally transform your organization. So that, when we talk about their HR strategy and things like that, then they can actually focus on values-based recruitment more,
Yeah.
because I think some of the issues that we have in the sector with retention is there's so much scarcity of, care workers because they're taking so long to onboard. You can't see them. You don't know where the capacity is, that people make decisions just based on availability. Get them in, quick, get them in. Yeah, they come through the door. Somebody walks through the door. They drive. They do weekends. Onboard them quick.
Yeah.
But they're not the right fit for your organisation. So
Right.
therefore, it impacts your retention. But actually, if people are walking through your door and they've got a passport, a me passport, and they can prove compliance, then maybe your HR strategy would be around spending more time doing your values-based recruitment and making sure that people are the right fit for your organisation. And if they're not being too worried, because you can see that there is other care or support workers out there open to work on your dashboard.
Absolutely. And I say when you have the cost using the ME passports, you can also invest in other things like your social value, which is something that a lot of missioners want to see that organizations are doing.
Yeah.
So you can reinvest that funds into the community and growing your social value offerings as well. So Carly, to end this, I would like to say, first of all, I'm very proud of you because, like you said, you didn't set out to be a tech entrepreneur. You saw a problem because of your passion, because of your drive, because of your love for the sector. You saw a problem and you came up with a solution, and you have grown in that process, and the sector is better off for it. So I'm very excited to see what's in the future for ME Passports. I'm certainly going to be following. I'm going to be sharing every update to our online community. Our online community is growing. Yeah, and any way I can evangelize about the passports and any provider I can share this with, I certainly will. Thank you so much for taking the time out to catch up with me, and forward to having you again on here to talk about your actual entrepreneurial journey as a tech sis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to, hopefully you can spare some time again to come back so we can talk about it a little bit more, because there are innovations to be had, and there are other people like yourselves who are in it. They're the front line. They're seeing other problems. So It would be great to have you on to share your journey so that other people can also be inspired. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you. Take care.
Enjoyed this episode, we would love to hear from you. Let us know what about this episode you liked and how we can improve. Join our growing community of providers and carers who are learning new processes and technology, discovering proven best practices, growing through insights from industry experts, all from people creating real practical solutions in care. This is the Health and Social Care Business Podcast.